Hello everyone, welcome to our Empowered Leadership Discussions, our Thursday lunchtime snippet of how we can come and share our knowledge and information and things that we see in the online business world. Tienie, hello, welcome along.
Hey Kirsty, thank you. Good to be here. The sun has popped its nose out here where we are, so we're having loads of fun. Took the dogs for a walk this morning in the sun.
Nice. It's very spring-like today, so I'm hoping it lasts, even though I keep seeing weather forecasts of snow being threatened. Let's hope we can hang on to the sun. So, in our Think About It... In our Think About It session today, we have dedicated a whole session to AI, and we've talked about AI across lots of other sessions, depending on the topic we've been talking about. But we thought we would just do a whole session on AI and have a conversation about that. And I think it's really important that we say from the off, we are not AI experts at all, but we see how it's been embraced in different businesses. We see how it's changing the working landscape rapidly. So we just thought it would be worth us coming and having a conversation and sharing with you guys what we see. So
I know just recently something went out on LinkedIn around giving your people permission to start using AI. I think that's a good starting point for it, but it's also the protocols around once people are using it, and what are the best places for it, and distinguishing between assistants and agents, and those kind of things, and making sure it's relevant for your business, and taking the fear factor out of it.
And that's one thing we do see. We see a degree of appetite towards AI, don't we? And I think it goes from the extreme of people are afraid of it, they don't want it, they've got no interest in learning about it, to the complete opposite end where people are really embracing it and riding the curve of wanting to stay ahead of the game. And it's moving really rapidly at the moment, and we're almost at the point when we first started using social media for business. I feel like it's going to happen. There's nothing we can do to stop it, and I just think if businesses don't get on that journey and embrace it in some degree, they are going to be left behind in the years to come, aren't they?
Yes. And when, like anything new, get to know what it is so that you can know where to plug and play it in your business for yourself, for what's most useful for you. Notebook LM, Gemini, ChatGPT, those are three amongst a whole host and array of others. And find out the piece that's relevant for you, for what it is you're trying to achieve. In the division of your business, whether it's finance, L&D, HR, whatever it is.
And I think that's really important to recognize, like, there's so many different tools, and whilst ChatGPT has been almost the most popular, successfully marketed, most used, commonly used, there are so many different tools, softwares out there that do completely different things. There's sector-specific ones, there's software that'll help a certain element within your business. It's understanding what's available, because I suppose you don't know what you don't know. And if we think if we just think in ChatGPT, that's very limited, isn't it? Because there are so many different tools out there to help make processes easier, to read data. And one thing I would say is do some research around, one, what's available in your sector, in your field, in your area of expertise to support you, but also understanding the software and the what it's doing, because different pieces of software scrape their data from different places. They are intended for use for different things. So there's some that are better for certain things versus other platforms. So it's understanding where they're getting their data and what it's meant to be used for, and how can you adapt to it into your business.
to add to that is also becoming comfortable that technology is meeting human need. So on a day-to-day basis, I want to try and do this, or if I analyze my week, these are the days that I really don't want to actually get involved in this. Is there a different tool that can help me make that easier for myself? And then have a discussion with my line manager and say, this is what this can help me with. Let's look at that. So it's getting into the place in a calculated way where artificial intelligence is going to help you, whether it's an agent or whether it's an assistant, and know the difference between the two. And when you're talking about an assistant, it's generating data for a conversation. And when you're looking at an agent, it is an outcomes tool to deliver a task. And so understanding the difference between those two things and what you're trying to achieve, you can now research it a little bit further for yourself to then get to what it is you need to get to make your life easier at work, or even excel at work as a result of your AI assistant or agent.
And just thinking of it in a term as an assistant or a digital assistant versus AI, I think is going to be, we're going to get to a point where we're going to have multiple versions of digital assistants or AI softwares to do certain elements. And whilst that might sound welcoming for some, it might sound crazy for others, but there is also, like I said before, a scale of that degree of where you want to land and where you are. So let's, because it's very different, because like it's what I'm seeing and out in the world, it's different for kind of small micro businesses to really large businesses. You can use them completely differently in different ways, can't you? So if we just kind of talk a little bit about how we've seen AI used and how we use it as well. And by all means, like, this is not covering all bases. This is just kind of us offering up some different ideas and suggestions of how it's worked well. And we also support a tech business that is all around AI in the education system. And that's really interesting to see how it's going to help and support our teachers in schools as well. So from a business perspective, like if we think of kind of really small, micro-sized businesses, this is going to give them the power to do so much more, isn't it? From what, like things like video creation, content creation, marketing, automation, like all of this stuff. Like there is so many tools at really accessible prices that micro and small businesses can use before they necessarily have to employ somebody. Like they can literally amplify their time. And we know people that run businesses, start businesses because they're passionate about whatever it is they start their business about. Not necessarily about doing videos on marketing for social media, but for example, we use an AI tool software so for example, our videos that we do today, we run it through and it automatically creates reels and shorts and micro, and like we literally have to do very, very little other than review it. So it's about using, for me, from really small micro businesses, it's about how do we just amplify the impact of our time by using those digital assistants to create more with the time that we have.
It's the finding a way where the digital assistant or agent can do some give you more time. So it's how do I buy more time by using this assistant for myself? And it's so from a manufacturing plant perspective, there are a few agents that can help you there in the planning and programming of that before you do your dry run, to then do manage the whole output and measure the output for you and kick out some information to offer up a productivity scale of sorts for you. Finance, the bookkeeping platforms that we have already that are automated, where you just take a picture and program it in your receipts, and it does all the budgeting for you.
In that finance piece, what we think, that's that kind of basic software has been around for such a long time. But how I'm seeing that evolve is that they all now talking to each other. It's all streamlined. It's making it so much easier that actually you barely have to get involved until it gets to the end point. Like, whereas before it was like, we input this information, we extract that from there, we input that to there. Where's the reconciliation between those two? Whereas now they actively talking to each other, all these different tools to make a smooth experience.
Yeah. And it is exactly that, is that how could I also improve the experience that I'm creating for my customer relationship interaction, for my the call that comes in that measures the tone of voice, the content that it's offering, answering a question in a multi-layered way. I've seen tools being created where as soon as the tone of voice is recognized, the artificial intelligence voice almost tries to emulate the tone and the frequency of that voice, so that it becomes a collaborative discussion, so that the experience is increased and improved. And it's to the detail of that. And I know you and I are talking about it at a very superficial level today. It is going to become a natural conversation for everybody by the end of this year.
Just the norm. Yeah.
And
just what the stuff we've talked about there has been talking about within a business, really. Like, there's so many different things that we've seen, but there's also the external. We've talked internal, behind the scenes. It's almost a customer facing external piece as well, isn't there? There's like the customer experience. There is so many touch points that AI can support with to enable that sales conversation or to nurture that client. And I know we've had the old school bots on websites for so long, but now they're becoming so much more emotionally intelligent around helping. And it's not just ask a question and a yes or no. It's almost having a real conversation. It's a much different experience now of how fast that's moving.
I'm aware of a customer visit that takes place virtually, but before the meeting takes place, part of the prep is researching the business, researching the people in the business, researching the products that's been inquired about, understanding what the output of that is, and offering up questions to ask, so that that meeting can be run smoothly and to the point, and we get to the exact thing that we need to get to in that meeting. And what it does, it makes the meeting time less than 3, because you're talking about the relevant content that you need to be talking about. Of course, there's human rapport that needs to be built initially, but then for you to be able to present yourself in a relevant way, all the research and data that's been done that you would normally do by a phone call, and do you know this, and go onto Wikipedia and go onto LinkedIn and go onto that, programming it into this process, it pops out some stuff there. And then you, based on the knowledge that you have, whether you're a novice, intermediate, advanced, or a master in that space, can tailor those questions to suit the audience that you're speaking to in that minute. So yes, there is a bit of a human intervention that's required, but it makes your life so much easier and adds value quicker.
Yeah. And I think a couple of points there, just to expand on a little bit for me, is there has to be an element of human interaction in some instances. So, for example, if it's a process for automation and 2 machines are talking to each other, like, that doesn't need human interaction. It's very step 1, 2, 3. They can go and copy that and do it. That's a different thing. But where there is almost the interaction of the customer, or whether you're doing something for writing or marketing or whatever, for me, there has to be the human element to make sure that it is accurate, because it isn't foolproof. And I think that's where I feel there's going to be a huge distinction that happens. There's going to be people that are mediocre and just tap into AI from a lazy perspective, and they just pull it and use it without even looking at it. Like, for me, that's not what I feel the strength of AI lies. I feel like it's a combination of AI and human interaction in that perspective. And I do feel like there needs to be a human, even just looking at it, learning how to use the tool you're using correctly, make sure you're giving it correct, deep and prompts, not just like 3 words. Like it's almost like a conversation to get the best out of whatever it is you're using. And I think something else that brings up is also feeds into the fear is this is going to replace an element of a person that's going to take that time, because somebody would get paid to do that research previously, where literally now we spend in 30 minutes on a piece of software or a tool that's going to give us that, isn't there? So that's kind of also, we need to recognize that and be really open, but it's coming. So unless we embrace it and evolve, it's coming.
Exactly.
Regardless, right?
The biggest piece for me where the human intervention is either on a lesser degree or a stronger degree. And yes, there's large language models that you can pump in from a legal perspective, or from an HR protocol perspective, or from a manufacturing project management perspective, and its output, you as a human got a lesser degree of involvement, because you just have to scrutinize the end result a little bit to make sure it's relevant for the application, for where it is you need it. But the better the prompt, the better the output. So rubbish in, rubbish out is the same principle applies from an AI programming perspective. The second piece that I want to just add here, of my 3 layers, and you know me, I talk in layers. The second thing is the concept of interpretation of the data that's relevant for the application in learning and development, in diversity, DEI, in HR policies and procedures, in strategic alignment of your people in the change management initiative. So all of those things are things that you can generate very quickly, but have to go through it and scrutinize it from a humanist perspective to make sure that it's relevant for the people for the humans that you know are going to be consuming that. And I think when we think of AI being used in business, protocols are not necessarily about what you're going to be using or giving permission to be used, because I think we're way past that already. Where the protocols need to come in is the digestion, interpretation of data created for the consumer. And that's where the protocol comes in, when we say, listen, AI is free in our business, but where we want you to scrutinize it is the data that gets created for relevance and consumability for the people in your business. And what does that look like? And then just on one of the points that you made, and this is my last point, is that people need 2 things in business: autonomy and mobility. And the mobility, don't be afraid that if you feel that your job could be taken over by artificial intelligence, create a protocol that actually helps the business get better, and yes, upskill me somewhere else, because I'm a talent in your business, because I have been here from a 10-year perspective, because I'm doing the right thing for the business. I've got the business's ethos in mind. So upskill me, pay attention to that, upskill me and put me somewhere else, because I'm a valued colleague in your business. And from a talent development perspective, we hire for culture fit and can teach skill. Now, if skill gets taken over by artificial intelligence, you lose all that cultural piece. Why not reskill that individual into a different area? Because you've got them as a colleague that fits your culture. So it's all of those things that we need to start looking at when we look at the whole artificial intelligence integration into our business.
Yeah, and I think just building off what you were saying there, there's so much here, isn't there? And this is just us.
So much.
This is us just kind of sharing our perspective and what we see, isn't it? Because there's no right or wrong. Everyone feels very different. And all we're doing is inviting you to think differently and to think of things from different perspectives. And there's a few things there that you said that I just want to pick up on. And one of them is there needs to be a mindset shift from the leaders in businesses. And that I think is lagging in some areas, especially more traditional industries, traditional sectors, I think are going to find hard that evolution into this new way of working. And the other thing is there's a security piece here, isn't there? And there's also an ethical piece for me around the security of the business, around input and data in. How do we protect that data, because we know it's going into a public platform? What is that data that's shared? And there's a whole, I understand from a business perspective, there's multi layers of security challenges when we allow and given permission to individuals to go and input data. There's also, you know, around sharing personal details and all that stuff. So there needs to be a policy, there needs to be a process, there needs to be guidance. And I think people don't know what that guidance looks like or should be. And I think that's maybe is a little bit of an apprehension as well. And I think then there's always an ethical piece, and this goes out into this is a much bigger issue around the AI industry in general, of like, how do we manage it? How do we make it ethically used? How do we make it AI for good? How do we, you know, there's all these things, because at the minute it is just a free for all. Like there's no boundaries, there's no regulation, there's nothing, is there? So that is in itself a challenge. Not one that's going to be fixed at our level. That is something that needs to be done at government level, or, you know, a much higher point. And interestingly, your point on when you said about like HR and contracts and things, and I've got a client who's an ex-lawyer, and I've seen a lot of people, very big people in the business world, talking about how the bills for their lawyers has been cut from like 50k to 5k. They just use an AI and getting them to check the end result. And on the face of it, I totally understand how you can do that. But then I talk to people within that industry, and there's almost that like, oh my God, no, like, oh, it's going to end up in disaster. It's going to end up in tears. So I think this kind of, and again, it's the two perspectives, isn't it? Because when you're in it, you feel that can't be done from AI. That's like got to be done by a person. But actually, when you're not in that, you can go, oh yeah, I can do that by AI. That's fine. So it's, again, the different perspectives and your appetite for how much you want to tap into it and use it, isn't it?
Yeah. So there's a few things there, and I feel, just to offer up a little bit of sanity, is start small. Just test out Gemini. I mean, you've been using Google Maps. Come on, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You've punched in a code, and it's taken you through your speaker system in your car to where it is you need to get to. Same applies where you may not have a zip code that you're tapping in, but what you have got is a thought of what it is you're trying to solve for. Typing that into Gemini or ChatGPT or anything similar, and seeing what comes out and saying, oh, that's an interesting answer. I didn't think of that, or I didn't think of this. And just try something small. And then spill into the work that you're doing and see how it's making your life easier for yourself. I just start small.
And it might be worth talking at this point, like I know we've briefly mentioned, but we're doing a project with the business students at a local business school. And we've focused it on AI and what does the future of the business coaching industry look like? What does the future of learning and development look like? We've gone to that very open, haven't we? Have gone, if our industry, if our role isn't required in the next 5 years, like it might not even be that, like what does that really look like? What does the AI takeover look like of the coaching industry or L&D? Because we want to understand and ride that wave. And I do feel that there is, it's easy for us because we like change, but it's not easy for other people to go, oh my God, my role might be non-existent in 5 years. They might have studied their whole life to get to that point. Whereas we're quite open and going, okay, cool, like what's next? Like, how can we move with it? But it's really important for us to be really open and embracing, isn't it? Because if it is, again, what I've said before, I think what's going to happen is we're going to get a lot of mediocrity, but it is also going to show, I feel, the people who are really, really good at their job and really understand it and have that depth I think you're going to be set aside from the people that just tap into AI all the time. And I think in our industry and in our service offering, I think you are going to get a gap of mediocrity delivery and really exceptional service. And we want to be in that exceptional service box, very much so.
Yes.
So we are willing to ride that wave of what that looks like to get there.
Yeah. And the gap is only going to increase.
Yeah.
With those that are applying artificial intelligence in the right way and interpreting it and helping it become more consumable for the relevant audience, versus the lazy applier that is going to throw something out that's mediocre and not change that space at all. And so that gap between those two elements are going to become much bigger, and therefore easier for clients to pick.
Yeah. And I think also, just to bring another point into that, what you've said around, and I think there's a lot of shade at the minute, I think, on people using AI. And like, if you think, I'm thinking of kind of like copywriters, digital marketers, like there's almost those that use AI aren't as good as the ones that don't use AI. And there's almost that, you know, people throwing a lot of shade around like, oh, they use AI, like they're not that good. Whereas actually, I feel like we need to change the mindset of embracing it. And there might be people out there listening thinking, oh my God, no way am I ever going to use it for whatever I do. Like, it's got to be just all me. Great, off you go. You know what I mean? Good for you. That's fine. That's your choice. But I do think we need to stop kind of making people feel bad for using AI to assist their business and to embrace it, as long as there's the human element and they're checking it, they're not being lazy, they're not being mediocre. But if they're using it to enhance their great service or double down on their marketing, why not? Is my thought process.
Yeah. And just to add to what you're saying, I think ego plays a big role in some of the reorientation. And what I love about the whole discussion about a digital age that we're in, that is now artificial intelligence age, which will then become a beta age of something else in the next 5 years, is the whole concept of you will require humans and coaches to interpret and help other humans navigate the landscape that is approaching us and that we're in already. And so that's awesome for me. I just want to come back to the studies at the university, the local university, that we've asked them to do some research for us. And also, we're not naive to think that it's a moment in time. What they might give us might be outdated in 3 days because of the speed of which the agents and assistants are working.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been open to understanding that, isn't it? And that actually, what can we learn from that to how we go forward? And it's just been really open, I think, and having a curious mindset. And like, we encourage that anyway across all of our stuff that we do. But I genuinely think it's going to take some mindset shifts to remain open and curious. But we need to ride the wave, right? We need to embrace it. We need to move with it. Is what the future is not slowing down. The use of it isn't stopping. It's only going to get more. But how can we look at it from a place of how can we use this for the greater good rather than fear it and not accept it and acknowledge it?
Yeah. It's going to make my life easier. I'm going to embrace it. It's going to give me some time so that I can focus on some other things. And let me just start small.
Yeah.
Let me just try it out for a little bit and see where I go. And
educate yourself, because I've done quite a lot of workshops on AI. I've attended marketing days on AI. I've experienced quite a variety of extremes of where on the spectrum people are on it and their take on it and how they're embracing it. But just educate yourself on it in a way that feels good. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. Just go and attend a webinar, go and attend a masterclass, go and listen to a podcast. Like, just understand. And whilst that might feel or seem scary what you hear, you've got to just understand it and just stay open and curious.
Yeah. No. And we can carry on for days on this discussion.
That's brought us to the top of the hour. So Oh, again, this is something that genuinely we could go on for ages. But thank you so much for joining me, Tienie. And thank you so much for anyone that's come to listen. And please share your thoughts. What are you doing with AI? How are you embracing it? Or are you finding a remote island in the middle of nowhere and hiding? Like, is that what you're doing? And we'll see you next week.